Welcome to our journey through Roman mythology. Prepare to walk through ancient streets where gods and mortals once mingled in grand temples and humble homes. Let us travel back in time and uncover the beliefs, legends, and practices that shaped Roman civilization. Our story begins imagining a landscape of rolling hills beside the Tiber River, each small settlement alive with whispers of spirits and powers beyond mortal comprehension. Long before Rome became an empire, groups of farmers and traders offered humble gifts to local deities. Clay altars stood in village centers, and flickering torches illuminated the darkness as families prayed for good harvests. In these early days, before the city on 7 hills transformed into the beating heart of a vast empire, the Romans drew upon a blend of influences. Among these were the Etruscans, a sophisticated civilization to the north, whose religion, art, and architecture displayed devotion to various gods. Etruscan soothsayers read omens in the flight of birds, the entrails of sacrificed animals, and even the patterns of lightning. This practice of omen reading became central to Roman religion, guiding decisions from daily affairs to crucial acts of war. This blend of cultures focused early Roman worship on reverence for unseen powers that governed all aspects of life. People believed that everything alive carried a divine spark, a guiding spirit known as a numen. A subtle source of power, the numen resided in streams, fields, and even doorways, influencing prosperity, fertility, and fortune. Even a single spring could be the dwelling of a water spirit, and farmers would offer fruit or wine, seeking blessings for their crops. This profound sense of connection between divine beings and daily life would shape Roman thought for centuries to come. Though small-scale, these rural worship practices taught Romans to approach the gods with seriousness. Ancient rituals always served a purpose, to maintain harmony or pax deorum between mortals and gods. If a ritual was performed with the correct words and offerings, the gods might show favor. A farmer might sacrifice a young animal before sowing seeds, hoping for a bountiful harvest. A merchant, embarking on a voyage to distant shores, might pour wine to the gods of safe passage. These gestures demonstrated reverence for the powers that governed every corner of the world. While the specifics of these early rites and myths are veiled by time, historians believe that Roman religion began with a pantheon of abstract deities, each linked to specific phenomena. There was a god for the threshold, another for the larder, and yet another for birth. As the years passed, these gods acquired more defined and sometimes overlapping identities. Etruscan influence introduced divination, temple designs, and the concept of reading omens to interpret divine will. As villages coalesced around the Palatine Hill, the fabric of religious life became more complex. Honor and duty toward the gods were no longer merely personal matters, but civic ones. Leaders realized they had to maintain communal rituals to keep the city safe and prosperous. Public ceremonies served as a unifying force, blending faith with the practical affairs of governance. Rome's early kings established the foundations of a state religion, organizing festivals and building temples. Another cultural thread was woven into the Roman tapestry. Greek settlers in southern Italy brought myths and images of gods with distinct personalities and stories. Though the intertwining of the Greek pantheon with Roman deities would take generations, these myths were eventually ready to blend and transform with local Roman tradition. At the heart of Roman mythology, we must remember, was the honoring of powers that defied human control. A violent storm could ruin crops, an earthquake could level cities, and a plague could decimate armies. All these calamities, it was believed, reflected a disruption of the bond between mortals and gods. To ensure the gods remained pleased, rituals needed to be performed with precision and unwavering seriousness. If the slightest error was made in the words of a prayer or the steps of a ceremony, it might need to be repeated until perfectly executed. This emphasis on accuracy carried a certain weight. Words had power, actions had meaning. Even an ordinary citizen looking out over the forum understood that a single misstep in ritual could invite disaster for all. In these early days, the divine realm felt immediate and ever-present. The smallest whisper or footfall could echo in the ears of unseen spirits. The gods were not distant entities, but woven into the very earth Romans walked upon, a story born from a keen awareness of their existence. As we turn our gaze to the next stage, we will witness how these beliefs crystallized into a structured pantheon with figures embodying Rome's sense of duty, power, and unity. The morning sun glistens on the meticulously laid stones of a growing city. Standing in the bustling forum, you can hear the voices of merchants hawking their wares and orators addressing passersby. Over time, this once humble community became a civic and religious hub, giving birth to a more organized pantheon. Roman society began to codify its beliefs, transforming them into a system that demanded allegiance not only in every citizen's heart, but also in the halls of power. The earliest priests or flamens presided over rituals dedicated to specific deities. The Vestals, young women chosen to keep Vesta's sacred fire burning, gained revered status. Elected officials like consuls and senators managed public festivals and commissioned temples whose columns and arches, rising above the forum, reflected a newfound grandeur. From the opulent sacrifices at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus to humble offerings at household shrines, the entire city throbbed with ceremonial life. In this burgeoning pantheon, three gods rose to preeminent positions as the city's guardians. They formed the Capitolian triad. Jupiter, considered the chief god, stood central, flanked by Juno and Minerva. Their shared temple on the Capitoline Hill served as a symbol of Rome's unity and divine favor. This triad was believed to guide Rome's destiny, protecting the city from external threats and ensuring civic stability. Even as Greek cultural influence began to permeate Roman life, these Roman gods retained their distinct attributes. The Greeks had Zeus, Hera, and Athena, but the Ramang triad embraced local traditions and values. Jupiter's thunderbolts carried the weight of Roman legal authority. Juno's protective gaze encompassed both the city and the women who sustained it. Minerva's wisdom was practical, tied to the crafts and strategies that built a constantly growing state. Woven into this civic fabric was the concept of do et de, meaning, I give so that you may give. This was one of several Latin phrases that historically shaped Roman religious thought. It articulated a reciprocal relationship between mortals and gods, built upon solemn rites and respectful offerings. If humans performed their reverence properly, the gods would bestow blessings, victory, and prosperity. This was not an abstract notion, but a guiding principle in every facet of Roman life. To ensure such sacred duties were correctly executed, religious offices were institutionalized. The Pontifex Maximus, chief among the priests, wielded immense influence. This official managed religious calendars, festivals, and the upkeep of temples, shaping Rome's religious policy. Politics and religion often intersected. For Romans, there was no inherent contradiction in being both pious and pragmatic. Their adherence to rituals was tied to a desire for tangible results, a good harvest, a naval victory, or the cessation of a dangerous plague. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens also felt connected to these grand ceremonies. Festivals featuring games, theatrical performances, and communal feasts could last for days. Children giggled as they watched processions of priests in beautiful robes. Merchants cheered when a victorious general made a grand entrance to offer thanks at Jupiter's altar. Common folk would gather on the temple steps to gossip or admire the gleaming decorations honoring the gods. Through these shared moments, the pantheon grew in the collective imagination as a fundamental pillar of the Roman spirit. Yet the gods who reigned from the marble temples of the Forum were not the only powers at play. In the city's corners, or on distant farms, simpler rites continued. While Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva presided over the public sphere, Countless local deities also watched over gates, springs, and pastures. There was no contradiction in this. Each domain of worship had its place. As Rome's power spread across the Italian peninsula and beyond, new gods came under Rome's expanding umbrella. Conquered peoples introduced their own deities, and Roman soldiers carried Roman practices to distant provinces. In time, the pantheon would absorb elements from the Greek world, Egypt, and Celtic and Germanic lands. But in this chapter of Rome's growth, the triad of Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva stood as an unshakable core, a testament to the city's origins and aspirations. Now, we approach the heart of this triad, looking to Jupiter himself, the king of the gods, and exploring how his thunder and authority resonated through the halls of Roman power. A stormy sky thunders, lightning illuminating the summit of a towering temple on the Capitoline Hill. Here stands Jupiter, father of gods and men, clutching his thunderbolt, his face an image of both mercy and might. For Romans, Jupiter's dominion was vast. He was not merely a stormbringer, but also the guardian of laws, the enforcer of divine justice, and the careful protector of the empire's future. When a consul raised his arms to pray before going to war, it was Jupiter he invoked. Romans believed Jupiter favored the virtues of honor and discipline. Through a well-executed ritual, they hoped for his grace on the battlefield. An army on the move carried consecrated standards in his name, and the spoils of victory would go to his altars as tokens of gratitude and proof that Rome maintained its sacred covenant with the divine. Jupiter's role extended beyond warfare. In the Senate, magistrates swore oaths in his name. The sense of justice that guided the Republic's laws found its symbol in Jupiter's unshakable judgment. To violate an oath made in Jupiter's name was to invite catastrophe, for it was not just a civic promise, but a sacred bond. Roman literature and inscriptions are replete with references to Jupiter's watchful eye, reminding citizens that no crime or betrayal could escape his sight. Yet Jupiter also represented mercy and renewal. When storms broke over parched lands, the nourishing rains were seen as gifts from the same thunderous god who hurled lightning bolts. Farmers prayed for Jupiter's storms to be well-timed, to give life to seeds and ensure bountiful harvests. During times of drought, priests performed special rites, hoping to persuade the sky to release its precious waters. The seasonal cycles of growth and decay were interpreted through Jupiter's whims, reinforcing the belief that he governed both destruction and rebirth. Temples dedicated to Jupiter were monuments to Rome's belief in divine favor. The most famous was the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, meaning Jupiter, the best and greatest. Perched on the Capitoline Hill, the temple was the site of triumphal processions and important civic gatherings. Its open courtyard sometimes filled with the scent of burning sacrifices, as priests in elaborate robes intoned prayers. The towering columns overlooking the city symbolized Jupiter's role as the ultimate overseer of Rome's destiny. During great victories, triumphant generals would ride in grand procession to the foot of the temple. They would dress in robes reminiscent of Jupiter's own attire, carrying symbols of conquest. Within the temple's precincts, these generals would offer their thanks and reverence to the god, dedicating the spoils of war to his glory. The cheers of the crowd mingled with the echo of prayers, transforming these rituals into displays of national pride and spiritual allegiance. The synergy between Jupiter and the state was never clearer than in these moments, where the full might of Rome seemed to stand under his shadow. Despite his imposing stature, Jupiter was more than a distant figure of authority. Legends tell of times he tested the integrity of mortals, even wandering the earth in disguise. People whispered that kindness shown to a stranger might be reciprocated by Jupiter himself, reminding all Romans that the gods, in forms great and small, walked among them. His thundering might and paternal benevolence served as an example of both how to rule and how to live. Some stories depicted Jupiter's complexities, particularly those shaped by Greek myths, where Zeus was known for many transformations and love affairs. While Romans were familiar with these Thales, they tended to emphasize Jupiter's role as the guardian of order and justice. Moral lessons found in literature portrayed him as a force promoting virtue and punishing hubris. In the Roman view, Jupiter's lightning bolts were never hurled without reason, but a weapon demanding reverence, symbolizing a cosmic order that mortals were neither to defy nor abandon. The worship of Jupiter stretched across Roman lands, from the deserts of Africa to the forests of Gaul. Soldiers stationed at distant outposts erected altars in his name, comforted by the thought that the king of the gods watched over them. His image, whether carved in stone or painted in vibrant colors, became an emblem of Roman identity. The unyielding gaze of this sky father reminded conquered provinces that Rome's dominion was blessed from above and thus ordained. In this way, Jupiter's story spanned many chapters of Roman history, with every new conquest, every innovative law, every act of civic virtue or religious devotion believed to bear his silent witness. Most of all, he remained the great cornerstone of Roman religious life, reminding even emperors and senators that they answered to a higher power. Under the shadow of his storms, the city learned humility, discipline, and the importance of communal bonds. And so, with thunder echoing through the valleys, Jupiter reigned supreme at the zenith of the pantheon, both revered and feared. From his majestic thunderbolt to the protective gestures that defined family and state. The next section calls us to honor the goddess who stood beside Jupiter. Juno, the protector of women and the watchful eye over the city's well-being. You step into the silent gloom of a temple, illuminated by votive candles and gleaming lamps. Here, a statue of Juno, draped in royal mantle, gazes forward with a face both regal and resolute. For the Roman people, Juno was the embodiment of womanhood, marriage, fertility, and the guardian spirit that protected the very soul of Rome. Revered as the queen of the gods, she was eternally associated with Jupiter, yet an equally potent force in her own right. Women in Rome looked to Juno for guidance, symbolizing the intricate cycle of life. Juno was believed to oversee every step, from the marriage vow to childbirth. Juno Regina, or Queen, reflected her elevated status as Jupiter's counterpart. Another revered form was Juno Lucina, the goddess who brought children into the light, whose aid was invoked for healthy births. Her presence permeated the heartbeat of daily life. Beyond her role in personal rights, Juno was also revered for protecting the state. When the city faced threats, as in the legend of the Gallic invasion, it was said that the shrieks of geese in Juno's sacred precinct warned the Romans of danger. Juno's name later became intertwined with the word moneta, meaning to warn, giving rise to the temple of Juno Moneta, the eventual site where money was minted. This connection underscored her protective nature, extending from personal well-being to the prosperity of the entire state. In the whirlwind of civic life, Juno's festivals brought citizens together in celebration and gratitude. Romans honored her annually during the Matronalia, a festival celebrating married women and the fundamental bond of family life. Husbands presented gifts to their wives, children offered thanks, and special sacrifices expressed devotion to this mother goddess. During other festivals, Juno's priests conducted public rites, ensuring the goddess's beneficence over Rome's political and social fabric. Despite her nurturing aspects, Juno was also seen as formidable and fiercely protective. She could be enraged by injustice or deceit. In some legends, borrowed from Greek tradition, Juno, like Hera, would rage at Jupiter's indiscretions. However, while Greek stories often emphasized Hera's jealousy, Roman poets tended to focus on Juno's dignity and sense of justice. Her wrath was formidable, but not unpredictable. In some tales, she would punish those who broke oaths or offended the gods, underscoring her importance in promoting virtuous conduct within marriage and family. Furthermore, Juno's role in state affairs was comprehensive. A general embarking on a campaign might pray to her for victory and the safe return of his soldiers to their wives and families. Politicians might seek Juno's wisdom to guide the fate of the Republic. As Rome transitioned from republic to empire, Juno gained imperial-level significance, her divine authority mingling with that of the ruling class. Some emperors sought to align themselves with her power, claiming special favor from the goddess. Juno's revered temples, often built near those dedicated to Jupiter, underscored her status as the queenly consort of the ruling divine household. Sculptors and painters depicted her with a scepter or diadem, emphasizing the weight of her position. Altars were piled high with incense, flowers, and precious metals, a testament to the gratitude of those who sought her succor in matters of marriage, fertility, and societal harmony. The worship of Juno, at times, overlapped with or resembled reverence for local mother goddesses. This syncretism facilitated a smoother cultural integration, allowing conquered peoples to see aspects of their own deities in her. Yet, Romans maintained Juno's fundamental identity as a figure who nurtured and protected the city's very lifeblood. Her presence manifested not only in the stillness of temples, but in every Roman home honoring the marriage bed and every festival celebrating the fertility of women. From Juno's might, we turn to the third member of the Capitoline Triad, Minerva. This goddess of wisdom and war strategy, with quiet determination, guided Rome's creative minds and protective forces, reminding all that intellect and skill were as vital as brute strength, both in the workshop and on the battlefield. A silent chamber before you, of polished marble, where sculptures of the owl, a symbol of wisdom, adorn the walls. In the center stands a figure, poised and resolute, helmeted and holding a spear, Minerva, the Roman goddess representing intellect, strategy, and creative endeavor. While she might share attributes with the Greek Athena, Minerva's sphere of influence, in Roman belief, extended to every workshop, classroom, and military camp. When you stepped into a Roman library or school, you would see proudly displayed images of Minerva, reminding students and scribes of the power of knowledge. Artisans and craftspeople felt an affinity with her, as she oversaw activities like weaving, metalwork, and various forms of design. From the fabric a mother wove for her family, to the meticulously carved columns of a grand temple, the fabric of daily life rested under her watchful eyes. Minerva's festivals highlighted both artistry and skill. The most important of these was the Quinquatris, an event beginning on March 19th and lasting several days. Initially dedicated to cleaning and consecrating weapons, it later transformed into a grand celebration of the arts. Musicians, poets, and actors performed in her honor, filling Rome's streets and theaters with festivity. While many in the crowd came for entertainment, they also acknowledged Minerva's guidance in every endeavor, from crafting a poem to forging a sword. On the battlefield, Minerva was not a goddess of brute force. Instead, she sanctified the strategic intellect that could outwit an enemy. Generals, valuing cunning over raw aggression, prayed for her insight. Roman warfare, often methodical and organized, reflected the calm discipline Minerva embodied. A well-planned campaign, supported by knowledge of terrain and psychology, was considered a testament to her guidance. In times of struggle, a soldier might whisper a prayer to Minerva, asking not only for protection, but also for clarity of thought. Minerva's temples were designed to reflect her dual nature of wisdom and warfare. At times, she was depicted with a shield bearing the head of Medusa, borrowed from Greek tradition, but reinterpreted with Roman sensibilities. This shield, a potent symbol of defense and intellect, hinted that knowledge could be a bulwark against threats. Minerva encouraged careful planning and deliberation, rather than reckless charges into battle. The Romans, known for their engineering feats, found in Minerva a celestial patron for their architectural ambitions. Whether constructing aqueducts, roads, or temples, they relied on careful measurements, precise mathematics, and a respect for form and function. All these aspects converged under Minerva's domain, demonstrating how Roman civilization valued practical ingenuity. Soldiers, engineers, architects, and scholars saw themselves under Minerva's protection, each striving for excellence in their crafts. Women, too, felt a strong connection to Minerva. As the patron of weaving and domestic arts, she imbued dignity and skill into the tasks that sustained daily life. Mothers taught their daughters to spin and weave, passing on not only practical skills, but also the stories Minerva exemplified. Even in these humble acts, there was a sense of reverence, each thread woven a supplication to the goddess, a gesture that art and labor were sanctified by her presence. In Roman literature, Minerva often guided or inspired heroic figures, representing the voice of reason, calling for moderation or prudence when passions flared. In the Roman mind, war without strategy was doomed, and art without discipline was meaningless. Thus, Minerva emerged as an elemental force, reminding all that intellect must guide the sword, and creativity must be built upon a foundation of practicality and diligent work. For centuries, even as the empire expanded across continents, the worship of Minerva remained strong. Soldiers stationed at the borders of civilization erected small shrines to her, seeking safe guidance in hostile territory. Artisans in distant provinces might carve her image into their tools or invoke her name before beginning their daily work. Like Jupiter and Juno, she was woven into the spiritual DNA of Rome, the patron of progress, craft, and creativity. Having explored the triad of Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, we begin to see how each deity embodied fundamental virtues of Roman life. Together, they formed the core of the pantheon, offering justice, protection, and wisdom to a growing empire. Now, let's move beyond the Capitoline Hill and meet a god whose origins resonated in every battlefield: Mars, a dynamic force once revered for agriculture, then elevated as the god of war. A field stretches before you, rows of crops swaying in a gentle breeze. Long ago, in the earliest days of Roman belief, Mars was known as a fertility god, protecting the growth of crops and the health of farm animals. He was associated with spring, vitality, and the stirrings of new life. Offerings were made to him to ensure granaries were full. But over time, as Rome's ambitions expanded, Mars began to embody another form of energy, the thunderous roar of war. Mars, in his earliest form as an agricultural deity, symbolized the inherent cycle of life and death in nature. Spring festivals honored him, and farmers performed dances and rites to purify their fields. Priests known as the Salii, dressed in ancient warrior garb, would leap and chant in his honor. This display was believed to ward off evil forces and protect the land. These rituals underscored the Roman view that agricultural lands were the foundation of society's sustenance. Without a successful harvest, the city could not stand. As Rome grew, the spear replaced the plow as Mars' primary emblem. He became the fierce protector of the Roman legions, wielding power over victory and conquest. Armies marching into foreign lands invoked him to guide their swords. Military standards were dedicated to him, and the footsteps on dusty roads echoed his name, implying that Rome's destiny was not merely to nurture life, but also to defend and expand the realm that sustained it. Mars Festival in March, named after him, marked the beginning of the campaigning season. Ceremonies held across the city sought his blessing to ensure Roman soldiers returned victorious. In another festival in October, a horse was sacrificed to him, emphasizing the intimate connection between military might and divine favor. These rites blended celebration with grim resolve, reflecting that war, though brutal, was a channel through which Rome's destiny was imposed. Throughout art and literature, Mars represented a masculine force. He was depicted as a tall, muscular figure, wearing a crested helmet, carrying a shield and spear. Legends also linked him to the founding of Rome itself. According to one tradition, Mars was the father of the twin brothers Romulus and Remus, suckled by a she-wolf and destined to found the city. This lineage placed Mars at the very center of Roman identity. By acknowledging him as their divine ancestor, Romans believed they shared the blood of a god uniquely suited for conquest and defense. Yet, Mars was not solely a symbol of aggression. His presence conveyed a sense of duty and discipline. Romans believed that war should be purposeful, not wanton. Soldiers offered their reverence to Mars, hoping to secure not only victory, but also the moral righteousness of their cause. If an enemy threatened Roman lands, it was Mars who stood at the gates, defending the city's very existence. Temples dedicated to Mars adorned the imperial lands. One of the most famous of these was the Temple of Mars Ultor, or Mars the Avenger, commissioned by Emperor Augustus. Built to honor the god for avenging the death of Julius Caesar, the temple also hosted ceremonies that affirmed Rome's moral and political authority. Standing amidst its marble columns, one could almost feel the drumming of Roman legions echoing through the space, a testament to the city's might and the god who guarded it. Despite his warrior nature, Mars still retained his presence in the agricultural calendar. In rural towns and villages, festivals continued to honor him as the protector of livestock and fields. Farmers prayed to him to safeguard their homes from thieves and predatory animals. In this way, Mars bridged two worlds, the quiet rhythms of the countryside and the harsh realities of the battlefield. His story demonstrates how Roman mythology adapted to the city's changing priorities, transforming from a simple agricultural community to the heart of an empire spanning continents. Transitioning from the contentions of war to the gentle allure of love, we now turn our attention to Venus. Though renowned for beauty and desire, Venus held deeper significance in Roman mythology, including ancestral connections that linked the city to ancient heroes. A rose garden where a gentle breeze rustles, sending leaves skittering across sun-dappled marble steps. Amidst the fragrant blooms stands a graceful figure, Venus, Rome's goddess of love, beauty, and desire. While she shared many attributes with the Greek Aphrodite, Rome's understanding of Venus expanded further, intertwining with notions of fertility, prosperity, and even imperial lineage, claiming descent from her. In Rome, Venus was far more than a goddess of mere romance. She was believed to influence every aspect of life, bestowing charm, grace, and vitality. Gardens, vineyards, and orchards were her domain. Lovers prayed to her to keep the spark of affection alive, while poets sang of her captivating presence, attributing to her the power to sway hearts and ignite devotion. The worship of Venus had multiple dimensions. As Venus Genetrix, or Mother Venus, she represented fertility and the continued prosperity of the Roman people. Families seeking blessings for their unions and children often invoked this maternal aspect, seeing in Venus a benevolent force securing the community's future. Offerings of flowers, incense, or small figurines might be left at her shrines, tokens of gratitude and hope for a fruitful marriage or a healthy child. Yet her influence was not limited to domestic harmony. In Roman history and legend, Venus held a high place as a divine ancestor. According to myth, the Trojan hero Aeneas, who escaped his burning city to found a new home in Italy, was her son. Through generations, Aeneas's lineage, culminating in the founding of Rome, meant that Romans were, by extension, descendants of Venus. This lineage became especially significant during the rule of Julius Caesar, who traced his ancestry to the goddess, elevating her prestige in the political sphere. Julius Caesar and subsequent emperors, notably Augustus, leveraged this celestial connection. Temples dedicated to Venus dotted the capital, her statues depicting her in various forms, sometimes emerging from the sea, sometimes robed with a gentle smile. Official imperial propaganda highlighted Venus as a symbol of divine favor for Rome, a goddess who blessed the state's power. Offerings were dedicated to secure her blessings for victory, prosperity, and civic unity. Festivals in Venus's honor shimmered with music, dance, and floral decorations. During the Vinalia, Romans offered her the first fruits of the grape harvest, acknowledging her role in sustaining agricultural bounty. Scenes of lovers exchanging tokens of affection could be seen throughout the city, illustrating how the goddess of love reigned in both public celebrations and private devotions. Roman literature, including Augustan-era poetry, often invoked Venus as a muse, attributing to her the source of life's pleasures. She was not merely a goddess of frivolous passion, but was considered vital to the cosmic harmony that bound gods and mortals. In some stories, she intervened to protect her lineage or steer heroes toward their destinies, shaping history as much as the fiercest war god could, by moving love and loyalty in the human heart. While her Greek counterpart, Aphrodite, was often depicted in personal relationships and intrigues, the Roman Venus often took on a more regal air. Though capable of ensnaring hearts with desire, she was frequently portrayed with a maternal tenderness or an imperial gravitas. Her temples stood as spaces for reflection, where citizens could seek her favor in matters of both romance and ambition. Thus, Venus's story in Roman culture is one of the gentle yet unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty. Far from being a frivolous goddess, Venus upheld the idea that affection and kinship could forge ties as strong as any military alliance. With Venus, we see how Roman mythology embraced not only conquest and power, but also tenderness and unity. As we look back at the founding stories that shaped Rome's identity, we see Venus standing at the threshold. Her son Aeneas's journey from the ruins of Troy to the Latin shores helped lay the groundwork for the city's might. In the next section, we will delve into these foundational legends, including the tale of Romulus and Remus, revealing how divine lineage and earthly contention blended to create Rome's earliest myths. Night falls over the Tiber River, the gentle lapping of water against the riverbank echoing in the darkness, as a basket woven of reeds floats on the river's surface. Inside lie two infants, Romulus and Remus, children of the Vestal Re Silvia and the god Mars. Exposed to the elements by a cruel decree, the babes drifted until a she-wolf discovered them on the river's edge. Instead of devouring the helpless twins, she suckled them, providing warmth and sustenance. Thus begins one of Rome's most iconic stories, a tale as rugged and enduring as the city itself. Raised by a shepherd named Faustulus and his wife, the twins learned courage, resilience, and loyalty on the hillsides near the Palatine Hill. As they grew, destiny led them to the truth of their royal lineage. Eventually, they confronted and overthrew the corrupt king who had usurped their grandfather's throne. Seeking to found their own city, Romulus and Remus chose the very spot where they had been rescued. However, a dispute over which hill to build upon and who would rule tragically ended with Romulus killing Remus, sealing the fate of the new settlement. The city was named Rome after Romulus, its first king. The story of Romulus and Remus, fraught with divine intervention and fraternal betrayal, reflects several core themes of Roman mythology. It emphasizes the interplay between wilderness, represented by the she-wolf, and the dawn of civilization. It underscores the role of destiny, suggesting that Rome was fated for both conflict and greatness from its very inception. The legend also affirms that the city's origins were blessed by the gods, as Mars was the father of Romulus and Remus, and that warrior prowess flowed in Rome's veins. This founding legend is just one of many that explained Rome's early history. Some stories emphasize that shepherds and outcasts formed the nascent city's first population, suggesting that Rome was a haven for those seeking new beginnings. Others focused on the Sabine women, abducted by Roman settlers, forcing two disparate communities to unite. A Sabine woman named Hersilia is said to have intervened between the warring armies, pleading for peace. Her courage led to reconciliation, with the Sabines blending their families and gods with those of the Romans, symbolizing Rome's capacity to absorb and integrate diverse peoples. Another foundational tale is that of Numa Pompilius, Rome's second king. Known for his piety and wisdom, Numa is said to have conversed with divine entities who guided him in establishing many religious and cultural traditions. During Numa's reign, temples were built, priestly orders founded, and rituals codified. While Romulus represented military might, Numa represented the spiritual and organizational backbone that would guide Roman society. The reigns of both, together, provided the two pillars upon which Rome would stand: martial power and civic order. Rome's founding myths also extend to the epic saga of Aeneas, the Trojan prince who crossed the seas to find a new homeland in Italy. While we will delve into Aeneas more deeply in the next section, it is important to note that Rome's mythic ancestors often blended Greek and Trojan legends with local Italian lore. By linking Romulus to Mars and Aeneas to Venus, the Romans forged a tapestry of divine lineage that set them apart. This dual ancestry, Mars and Venus, symbolized an ideal balance of ferocity and affection, conquest and creativity. Cults and festivals arose around these legendary figures. Statues of the she-wolf and Romulus and Remus were placed in public squares, reminding citizens of their city's extraordinary birth. Effigies of Re Silvia and Mars stood in temple precincts, highlighting the divine origins of Roman lineage. Games, poems, and public recitations narrated these stories, embedding them into the collective consciousness of each new generation. The story of Romulus and Remus highlighted the power of unity, though born from tragedy. Numa's piety and civic reforms underscored the importance of religious and social harmony. In a city destined to grow into an empire, these foundational myths reminded Romans that their destiny was guided by the gods. From these origin tales, we transition to one of the most influential narratives in Roman culture, the epic journey of Aeneas. His story reveals a dimension of Roman mythology that emphasizes duty, perseverance, and divine guidance, blending the fragments of Troy's destruction with the promise of a new realm. Flames engulfed the towers of Troy, the night sky painted crimson as the once proud and unyielding city bows to its fate. Amidst the chaos and cries of defeat, a warrior carries his aged father on his back and holds the hand of his young son. This man is Aeneas, son of the goddess Venus. Guided by divine commands, he flees the burning city to seek a new destiny far from the ashes of his homeland. In Roman mythology, Aeneas is an exemplar of pietas, often translated as piety or dutifulness. This concept, central to Roman values, encompasses allegiance not only to the gods, but also to one's family and country. Aeneas' unwavering commitment to carrying his father and leading his people across treacherous seas is the ultimate illustration of this virtue. He heeds the will of the gods, fulfills his obligations, and endures countless hardships without straying from his purpose. The journey takes Aeneas and his followers to many lands. They wander the Mediterranean, encounter storms unleashed by vengeful gods, forge alliances, and battle monsters. At every turn, the will of the gods directs Aeneas forward. He is told that his final resting place is in Italy, where he will sow the seeds of a powerful nation. This promise sustains him in the face of despair, reminding him that his personal desires must bow to a greater divine plan. One of the most poignant episodes of this epic takes place in Carthage, where Queen Dido offers safe haven to the Trojan refugees. Aeneas and Dido fall deeply in love, but the gods command him to leave. Heartbroken, Aeneas departs, and a despairing Dido curses Aeneas and his descendants, foreshadowing the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage. This conflict highlights Aeneas' struggle between personal longing and divine mandate. His unswerving obedience to destiny ultimately determines the course of history. When Aeneas finally arrives in Italy, he forms alliances with local tribes, but also becomes embroiled in conflicts. War flares as some Italian leaders resist the newcomers, resulting in fierce clashes reminiscent of the brutality of the Trojan War. Victory demands sacrifice, yet Aeneas persists, knowing that he carries the fate of a future empire. In some versions of the story, he marries Lavinia, the daughter of a local king, uniting Trojan and Italian lineages. In time, descendants from this line would give birth to Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. The Latin epic poem known as the Aeneid, written by Virgil, immortalizes Aeneas's adventure. Though a later literary masterpiece, it exemplifies the beliefs held by many Romans that their city was not just a historical accident, but a project overseen by divine powers. Aeneas, with his unswerving loyalty to the gods, his family, and his community, personified Rome's ideal of duty. He taught generations of Romans to see themselves as a chosen people, shaping their self-image. In public ceremonies, the story of Aeneas was celebrated as a cornerstone of Rome's mythic origins. Emperors like Augustus, who claimed descent from the Trojan hero, used these stories to legitimize their rule. Scenes from the Aeneid were depicted in temples, while plays and public readings stirred the imagination of citizens from every social class. In time, Aeneas's virtues became a guiding star, intertwined with the empire's sense of moral righteousness, emphasizing the value of adhering to duty above all else. Thus, from the fires of Troy to a new dawn in Italy, Aeneas's story is interwoven with love, sacrifice, war, and hope. It added a grand, epic dimension to Roman mythology, presenting a hero who, through his faith in the gods, transcended his personal desires. For more stories that dive into the strange and mysterious corners of history, join me on the channel. You won't want to miss what's coming next.